Hello and welcome back yet again to Dad the Influencer, a podcast about travel, technology and innovation, so admirably broad in scope that it has, without apology, come to encompass history, art, religion and politics in a way that will stimulate the neurodivergent, amaze the neurotypical, and leave everyone else wondering whether they accidentally subscribed to a different reality entirely. Through interviews, dialogues, and monologues, we explore our shared humanity through travel, technology that enables it, and the ecosystems that reward elastic thinking and have the good sense to encourage innovation.
Right, hello. I am here today with Alex Koukovistas, who spoke last week at the Nottingham Data Science and AI meetup. I think it was last week. Alex, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Very good, very good. Thank you for being here. It was a very interesting talk last week or whenever it was. It got a lot of engagement, which is always a good sign. In fact, I think that's probably the most amount of questions we've ever had at the end of one of those talks. So happy days. Some of those might have been because the pizzas were late arriving and we had to keep the ball rolling, but I think genuinely people had a lot of questions about that. So I'm going to start off for the benefit of everyone who doesn't know who you are. Could you start off you describe yourself as an AI skeptic, but you work as an AI enablement lead. So maybe first just say a bit about your background and then explain with this brilliant contradiction and how you hold both the things at the same time.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting dichotomy in my personality. So I started by studying computer science back in the wild days of 2011. And I wanted to be a real programmer, write device drivers, just, very hardcore programming. It didn't work out that way. So I found myself in web development. And that's kind of where I specialized for a bit. Solution architecture, software architecture. I kept going back and forth, lots of backend development and APIs. And through that, I managed to break through into the more DevRel, DevX, product management for APIs roles. Lately technical project management and now the AI enablement. So I have like a very weird background, I feel, for where I am. And AI was always one of those things that I was really excited about. Even in uni, I wanted to make a robotic companion and it was amazing. So when this commercialized AI came out, I found out I have many issues with it. First of all, it's not AI. So at the same time, it's also something very exciting and a great tool. So as a skeptic, I went into it because, this is not AI, but it unlocks so many possibilities. So let's put my opinion out there and kind of try and shape up the industry into more of what I think it should be.
Okay, so let's start with that bold sentence you said twice, that commercial AI is not AI.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So for ease of use in conversation, it's artificial intelligence. It's not really an intelligence. It's a really nice algorithm communicating with other algorithms. And that's great. But in terms of, the whole conversation about sentience, how much it actually understands versus processes data, it's just not there. But I get the need to, call it something more marketable than, it's a data processing algorithm that acts on the input.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. So what you're saying is it's not sentient AI. It's not thinking AI. It's just
not intelligent.
It's emulating intelligence without actually being. Okay, that's fair enough. I will let that one slide.
Yeah.
So, so you have a background in software architecture and APIs, which is great. So your journey in was basically you worked in those. You didn't get to do drivers and the cool stuff. And then you took an interest in AI, and then Kentiko made a deliberate decision to invest heavily in AI and created a role for you specifically. So what does it feel like to be hired as someone who's bet on the future like that? Is it scary?
It's scary, but also it's more boring than someone might think because the subject is new. It's AI, it's powerful and everything. But at the end of the day, it's another tool. So as long as you approach it as the normal transformation journey about adopting a new tool in a company, I think you'll be fine, especially at this point where we've been through the cloud transformations, even, just picking up new frameworks and so on. It's still the same. It's just that the applications are so wide that people's expectations are the hardest thing to manage when you're dealing with AI.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, it suddenly made me think, there's a guy I knew, I haven't talked to him in ages, but back along, and he was a driver. He did it's C programming, and he built drivers. And I remember when I first met him, I'm like, oh, cool. That's like the hardcore real programming. And he looked at me with sort of a confused look on his face. He just said, I mean, it's all real. It's just like whatever you know is easy, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it sounds like that's exactly what you're saying, not with the drivers, but with AI, that it's once you start doing it, it is just a tool. And it is just sort of normal. So that kind of makes sense to me. And then in your talk, you say the whole premise was that and this is what really caught me, is that everyone is looking at the wrong 20% of what engineers do. Can you explain what the 80% opportunity is that you talked about in your talk?
Yeah. So for context, essentially, Microsoft did the research and they found out that in an ideal developer's day, 20% spent on coding. Cool.
Yeah.
But then if you start thinking about the whole discussion and what's the main talking point in everyone about, that everyone is covering in the tech industry right now is, how do we write code? Are developers going to be replaced? And so on. But even in this ideal scenario, based on, again, Microsoft's research, that's only 20% of what a developer does. So why obsess over it? So when we're looking at the 80%, there's a few categories, which can be, documentation, testing, picking up new technologies, even general communication. So if we just wanted to abstract it quite a lot, it just comes down to it's administrative work, it's testing, it's understanding, and it's a lot of tasks that have nothing to do with writing the code, but can affect writing the code.
That makes sense. So what you're saying is that AI might replace the 20% that programmers do where they're actually programming, but the other 80% is the important bit. And do you think AI could potentially encroach into there as well?
Yeah. I mean, the big thing with the 80% is that's where you can apply AI quite more liberally, in the sense,
Oh, I see. So that's where the bulk of the AI is, not in the programming bit. Okay.
Yeah. I think all of it can be automated to some extent, even the 20% or the 80%. It's just that if you focus on how to resolve your 80%, that it's someone's day, you get more out of AI and more out of productivity.
Yeah.
Even as an example, right? Let's say you have a lot of meetings on a distributed team. The difference between you having AI transcripts and, meeting notes versus not having them can be massive, because then the AI transcripts can be fed into other AI, you can generate documentation and so on.
Yeah.
But if all you ever bothered is like, how much money do we need for Copilot or for Claude to actually write the code? You completely ignore just the basic thing, hey, let's get AI transcripts.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that makes sense. And then you talk about AI isn't so. You actually had a slide. It says AI is not a technology. Let me try that again. AI is not a technological issue, and that really jumped out. You say it's a transformation puzzle. So can you explain what you mean by that and what organizations are getting wrong?
Yeah. So this is one of those things that you see some conversation online. DX being one of the companies in literally the edge of it, just talking about how it's more about transformation, it's not technological. The big thing is the technology is there, it's very powerful, it can be very expensive, but it doesn't matter what the technology can do if your processes and how you work with it cannot accommodate it. An example I often give to people is we have AI code reviews. Perfect. But what is the purpose of it? Unless you are able to accept that an AI reviewer is as good as a human reviewer, you're just adding things to your processes without getting much out of it. So once you start thinking about how do I plug this in, then the transformation puzzle starts to happen. And this is where I feel the conversation should be in most companies, that we have this problem. How do we fit this new technology into it and how much do we trust it?
Okay, so it's always about, so it's finding about how you can trust it. And you frame that talking about unhealthy habits being magnified by AI. Can you give some examples of those without naming names or shaming anybody?
Yeah. I mean, the most classic, really, thing you see is that project managers and product owners and, that sort of tech adjacent role, but without being too technical, has this misunderstanding that, I can write code. Yeah, in theory, you can generate code, that's fine. But unless you understand that, it's just going to multiply how much garbage code you generate. So it's not necessarily something that you are going to all of a sudden, give Cloud Code to every single one of your PMs and they can write product code that you're going to release. And the same thing can be done with a lot of things that, if you accept that you're going to use AI to automatically generate texts, you might reach a point where you just generate text that you pass along each other and nobody's actually reading them. So all the bad habits are just going to be magnified.
That makes sense. And I mean, I see this, and I might be wrong, but my sort of hypothesis that I keep testing in my mind is that the difference between coding with AI and coding in a third generation language is a lot like the difference between building a driver in C and building something using a third generation language. The programming changes. Used to be like, for a while, programming was very much about maths, mostly about XY coordinates in a screen and deciding where you put things, and that doesn't work anymore. Yeah, then second language, it was all drawn on the screen. That's all easy. And then it was a lot more about API. Well, first connecting to databases and then API endpoints. And now it's AI. Do you think that's what's happening as well? Or do you think it's gonna shift more than that?
Yeah, to an extent, yes. I had a really nice, very theoretical discussion with my VP recently. If we should be reviewing code or if we should be reviewing prompts. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, if you have a specific context and you run a prompt with a specific model, the results you're going to get are similar enough that it might not be worth reviewing the code anymore. But I think we're still very early in the whole adoption and tool sets we have available to even really go down that far. Some companies are actively trying to promote what you're saying. I believe Cursor, they made this grand statement. We want to replace how programmers write code, and it's going to be a new level of abstraction. So to me, it's like more, let's see, but already we see some signs where let's just review the prompt. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Interesting. That actually, and I hadn't thought of that before, but that makes a lot more sense than, I mean, you need to, obviously, there comes at the early stages, you need to check what the prompt's actually generating, what it's doing, what the output is. But yeah, it becomes quickly, isn't it? What's the input?
Exactly, because for example, you're going to build some guardrails eventually. It has to run through linters. You have to do some automated checks, etc. So at that point, if you know that the prompt is always going to go through scrutiny, the output is going to go through the scrutiny of it has to pass all these checks. You can just check what the prompt is supposed to do and, what the instructions are to your custom agent. And that really accelerates how you review code and also how you review features. I just don't think the trust and the experience is there yet to just say, yeah, this is the new way of doing things.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And is that with Kentako's approach, you talk about the anti-pattern. Is that part of what you're talking about there, or is that something else?
The anti-pattern is a bit different. So we were blessed enough and we agreed that for our current fiscal year, it was budgeted that everyone's going to get an AI tool. It was literally like, here you go. Everyone in engineering gets, we started with Cursor and Copilot.
Yeah.
And try it out, figure out what you do. The problem with that is that when you just give a tool out there and you expect people to experiment, you don't have the expectations of what the experiment should produce or how it should look like. And then obviously there's the expectation from management. If I give you all this new tool, all of you are going to use it, right? Which is not going to happen. Like, people still need that guidance. So I would say that was a bit of a difficulty, because then it makes everything else difficult in, the 80%, because you don't have any comparison, AI team versus non-AI team, or, how does activity look between power users and non-power users and so on. So it makes acting on numbers much more difficult. And obviously, when you're thinking of, okay, let me experiment with something. I want to do AI code reviews. Again, big ticket item for everyone.
Yeah.
If your default rollout strategy is every single team should do it, we have 8 product teams. Not all 8 product teams can realistically produce these experiments and these results within a given time frame. So if you start framing it more, okay, these 2 teams or this one team for 2 months will do it, and then start building your processes based on that.
Okay, so what you're trying to do is you're trying to build maturity with the tool, increase confidence in the tool, increase confidence in the results, and then change the process rather than change the process and see what happens.
Yeah, it's it's a difference between technology for technology's sake or technology that solves a specific problem.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel AI can really go into technology for technology's sake very heavily.
Yes. Well, that's the famous, if the only tool you have is a hammer, all your problems start looking like nails, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. You started with public integration repositories as your
Mhm.
first experiment. It was lower stakes, smaller scope, time boxed. What did you learn from that experiment that surprised you?
Yeah, so we do have a lot of public repositories, and obviously because they don't affect the core platform much, it was a safe way to experiment. It's also hosted on GitHub, so we can actually make use of cloud agents and Copilot reviews and so on. So in terms of a pilot, it made the perfect sense. So we had our team who is specifically working on these public integrations repositories, plus Sean, our product evangelist. He's also a heavy contributor there. And sometimes we started opening pull requests using Copilot cloud agents. And then instead of waiting for another developer for a review, why don't we ask Copilot? So the initial findings we have from there, and this is not a very formal experiment yet, it was me going through meetings and so on, so I don't have more data, but people are very positive about it. And it was one of those things that this works really well. We need more of this. Let's turn into a more formal process. So now we're launching the more formal project based off those initial points of feedback. And the question I put forward is, okay, what's currently stopping us from fully automating a release? And we're just using that as our axis to kind of figure out what else do we need to do, what processes do we need to change. We also have some questions whether AI can be trusted or not, if we still need humans. What does it mean for SDLC? So part of it is very theoretical and part of it is like very pragmatic. Yeah, we just need to build this piece of infrastructure to do it.
Okay, cool. And then I think as part of that or adjacent to that, you talk about the docs near the code principle, something you're very passionate about. Why is documentation so central to making AI work? I get why it makes tech work, but what is it about AI that makes it work well? Ed, do you have any theories on why teams neglect it so much?
Yeah. So let's start from the beginning. I hope I'm not breaking any illusions here, but our developer documentation is in Confluence, and that can be outdated, and Confluence is very hard to navigate. On top of that, we're not comfortable with using Rovo, their AI yet, which means we have no real way to interact with it except for their MCP. The problem with the Atlassian MCP is that it's very token heavy and it can be very junky in the sense that it's going to go through a few steps and then end up using some sort of like Rovo search query or JQL, CQL, whatever. So it's not something you can rely on to just quickly get you results. And obviously, because it's using a search through the MCP, that's also not very reliable. That is to say, that was one major blocker for us to be able to say, hey, agent, here's all you need to understand. Go and build for me. So the question was, how do we actually get there to that stage? And by bringing the docs closer to the code, that means we can easily update it with agents. We can check it with agents. We can ask agents to confirm when we open a pull request if the documentation is still valid. And then we can use that as our basis to start building agent skills, instructions, and so on. So at this point, one of the big wins we had is that we brought our UI testing documentation all in code already, and we're building agent skills that use it. So now when anyone wants to do UI testing on Kentico, the platform, you can just go in, and even me without any knowledge on it, I can just scan agent, hey, I need you to run the UI test suite and then create a new UI test that does this.
Nice.
And that's something we can already offload. That's really the big benefit. Both humans and AI agents benefit a lot from quality engineering practices. But at the same time, I feel it's the first thing that gets neglected or cut off when there's more pressure or budget cuts and so on.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's really cool with the UI testing, and yeah, makes perfect sense to keep that all together. And actually, sort of goes back to what you were saying about the prompt reviews, is because that's the bit that's almost like your starting point. Make sure you get that right, and I think keeping the prompts, maybe not for the general public because you're really giving away your special sauce then, but for engineers and for internally, yeah, having your prompts there, that could make a massive difference.
Yeah, and it's one of those big things in our strategy. One of the things we're developing as part of our product, and I think, don't quote me on this, but I think everyone just gets it. It's public. We're building this Kentico Pilot, which is which is a collection of tools from agent prompts to custom agents to documentation specifically for people who want to build with Kentico to be able to use it. And we actually have our product teams behind it. It's one of our core concerns right now because we want people to be able to confidently use agents to build on Kentico. So we're happy to share the secret sauce even.
Okay, cool. And what exactly does Kentacle do?
Yeah, we're a digital experience platform provider. That's the official title. In practice, it means that we cater to every need of someone who's like a marketing director or head of marketing. So anything from newsletters, multiple channels, website, and we're now building more AI services as well.
Okay, so it's marketing software that lends itself really well to both AI automation and to integration with anything and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, and now you also talk a bit about the autonomy maturity ladder, and that goes from auto-complete at level 0 all the way to broader autonomy at level 5. Where do you think most organizations are sitting right now?
That's a bit tricky because the more I speak to people and the more numbers I see, I'm not confident people are using as much AI as they say they are. One of the big wake-up moments for me was that again, DX numbers, they revealed that the top 20% of companies that work with them, which means they already want to invest significantly in their analytics, are spending about $500 per developer per year. And if you think that Cloud Max is $150 per developer per month, that's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I think realistically, most companies are between a level 0, I change nothing, I just have the new tool, which is the beauty of AI. You can literally change nothing and still get a lot of benefits out of it. And at the stage where they're like, maybe if we automate more, but I think the significant difference there is like it varies a lot from, small and medium businesses, startups, and then huge corporations. I feel to a great extent, startups and smaller companies are way more into let's fully automate things out of necessity rather than let's lead with process.
Makes sense. So now we're going to move on to either what's the most boring bit, but the bit that I actually find most interesting, which is metrics and budget.
Yeah.
Spreadsheets. So you're quite self-aware about metrics being horrible and boring, but you clearly think that that they matter enormously. What's the danger that you see in skipping them?
Yeah, so they're boring, but they can also be very interesting to me because then you start seeing patterns about how you use AI, how do your people interact, even, how happy they are through a survey. The thing that I expect most companies to face at some point is to ask the question, okay, we got the tool, so what did we get out of it? And if you're unable to answer that question, you're unable to build on it unless you somehow have infinite money, maybe Microsoft, At that point, if you don't have the metrics, you cannot make decisions based on your data, and then you cannot budget, you don't understand how to even develop this further. It's just a thing that happened. And you might reach a point that, you start bleeding money or you start bleeding efficiency, however you want to say it. And one day you're going to have a wake-up call and think, I never needed cloud hosting. I just needed to have my own rack. So, it's a similar concept. Because once you measure it, you understand better, how much do you need to pay for tools? Maybe you need to pay for infrastructure to run your local models. So there's a lot of decisions you need to make, and you definitely need the data to make them.
Cool. And you move from measuring lines of code generated to things like PR cycle time and AI-assisted PR. Interesting, because I have had, I think throughout my decades-long career of tech, trying to figure out specifically how to measure software engineering output has always been really, really difficult. But you seem to have come up with an idea, with a concept, at least for you, which is measuring PR cycle time, AI-assisted PRs. I'm assuming you mean product requirements. What prompted this evolution? Sorry?
Pull requests.
Pull requests.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is pull request cycle time and AI-assisted pull requests. What prompted that evolution, and what does PR cycle time actually tell you that lines of code doesn't?
Yeah, like I said, I find it very challenging because the only way to get all the data you need is to be very intrusive. And then you become counterproductive, measuring exactly what developers are viewing and so on. So you need a bit more light-handed metrics that also don't necessarily rely on humans, because we're very good at not following processes or forgetting details. So I sat down and looked at what we can actually do. DORA metrics were very useless to us, not because they're bad, but because we have fixed release cycles. So we don't really care about releases that much because, we release every 2 weeks or however much.
Yeah.
That's it. So then we were looking at, okay, maybe features we release, maybe something else. But then if you abstract it a bit, and it's one of my favorite books, it's called The Phoenix Project, and it's about DevOps.
Yeah.
And great book, but then it
Do you
speaks
remember who
about,
the author is?
I don't know.
I'll find it and put it in because I can't
Yeah.
remember either. But I
Yeah.
would put that if you're listening to this, if you haven't read that, 100% that should be your life's not complete until you've read that book, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. So one of the lines is like the characters go and speak about what is work and how you have different streams of work, how work manifests in many ways. So I thought, why don't we answer the question, how does our unit of work, which is always a pull request, start changing after we use the AI? Because you hear in the industry that, okay, 20% more throughput, 20% smaller cycle times, and so on. So let's measure it. We have the data. We know all engineers have to make pull requests to merge code, so we don't have to rely on someone clicking a status in Jira. And on top of that, we had the manual step, which was the AI-assisted pull requests. So when an engineer opened a pull request, they could mark if they used the AI for it or not. And our objective there, we wanted 100% of our engineering to have at least one AI-assisted pull request. That was all. Not how many they did, just we know that they tried it. Then for the cycle times, it was just, let's look at it every month, let's see how fast we merge, and so on. Again, just because it's our unit of work, it doesn't matter what it is, if it's a bug or if it's whatever.
Yeah.
It's just a unit of work. And it worked quite well for a bit, and we're going to be maintaining it. It's just that we're reaching the point now that we need something way more powerful to do it for us. And that's where the whole thing you said that, it's very difficult to measure engineering productivity metrics. So the best thing we can do is get a tool that they have put some people behind it to actually try and figure out what's the formula to measure productivity and use that to benchmark ourselves.
Okay, cool. And I suppose that sort of goes into the budgeting questions as well, because that bit really resonated with me. You said forecasting based on historical AI is useless, is pointless, which I get. Yeah, because AI. Tell me if I got this right. It's pointless because AI just changes too much, and what the models do changes too much, and the prices, everything just fluctuates too much. So how do you have a sensible budget conversation with the finance team when the costs are moving so fast?
Yeah, so like you said, last year, as in 3 months ago, Cursor changed how they do their pricing. So that all of a sudden it was a disruption on how we calculate it. AI is not mature enough right now, and obviously as you increase your adoption, your needs are going to increase. So even if you looked at your on-demand tokens or something like that, it's just not going to be realistic. The best thing you can do is see what you have and double it. But cool, maybe it can work for some people. Then even if the sitting cost or how they build things doesn't change, for example, Copilot has been consistent, the moment someone like Anthropic releases Claude Opus and it's charged at 3 times the rate, your budget calculation has changed, but your available budget hasn't. So in that sense, the way I approached it, and I guess that's partly because I come from a family of accountants. Yeah, I joined tech because I didn't want to be an accountant, but here we are, I guess.
I'm really sorry to hear that. My dad's a chartered accountant as well, so I feel your pain.
I'm glad to hear that. But yeah, I just came up with this persona model, and it was a bit tricky because obviously you don't want to make it seem like, it's based on someone's skill levels or whatever. And it's something I keep repeating to people. This has nothing to do with your skill. It's just like money. So I came up with this persona model because at the end of the day, it's going to be a range. So you need to build in some buffer and so on. So we know that one of our developers, let's say one of our software engineers, some months they might need Claude Max. Sometimes they might want to use Cursor. Sometimes they might need more on-demand tokens. I'm not going to go and plan it in, but what I can do is say, so their standard toolkit is, let's say, Claude and Copilot. But one time, they might need to switch to Claude Max. They might need to have it for 6 months. So all of a sudden, the power user persona for that is a range between $80 and $200. And at least I know there I can budget for $200. I can figure out how many of my users are this power user persona and get on with it. On the other side of the spectrum, we just have conservative users, which, for example, our DevOps team are perfectly happy just using Copilot and maybe Claude. So I'm not expecting them actually to grow all that much. $45, cool. We can plan it in.
And go on.
Yeah, so once you start kind of abstracting it and just putting it into different persona buckets, you can kind of more effectively plan it in because at least, even if a tool becomes more expensive, you're like, okay, Claude Max is now $175. Cool. I budget for $200 anyway.
And well, so this is what I was worried because you did that, and I thought that was cool. Like you segment the users, but how often do like conservative users or average users become power users, or vice versa for that matter? Do people tend to stay in their categories from what you've seen, or do people change as they see what's available?
To be 100% transparent, because this is our model for the next fiscal year, we're actually trying it now to actually answer that question.
Okay, so ask you again next year.
Yeah, essentially. But the way I've done it is I have the numbers of how many tools people are actually using right now.
Yeah.
And I also have all the requests about, hey, can we get Claude Max? So it's like, okay, Claude Max is our big ticket item. How many people asked me about this? How many people have multiple tools? And I found out that it's actually 22% of our developers. Okay, so 2 people per product team plus 1 buffer. That's our power users.
Yeah.
And because every single persona has buffers built in, it doesn't necessarily matter in the grand scheme. Okay, you can have 1 or 2 more people with Claude Max, or tell someone, sorry, we don't have budget, but you can kind of figure it out.
Cool. It's insane. It's insane. It's insane how you budget. I think I've mentioned it on this podcast before, but I've got 4 kids between 20 and 30 years of age, so they're all more or less grown up. And one of the things I've found is that 2 of them are passionately into AI. Neither of work in the tech sector. So in fact, none of the kids work in tech, but 2 of them are like really into it. And it's like the more they use it, the more they get into it. Mm-hmm. 2 of them just like they will actively, if I say, oh, I just asked something on ChatGPT, they won't listen to the answer because they hate it that much. Unless it's from Google, I don't believe it. But it's interesting to see to see that vision, not in tech, not in anything, but just someone starting off to like ask a few basic questions to now like doubling down on super long prompts to voice. So one of them's really into everything equestrian. So she's like literally trying to figure out what she can learn and do with horses using AI as the source. And it's incredible how deeply she's gone into it. But yeah, so that was my own question, I guess, is what my own familial AI budget's going to have to be at the end of the day.
Yeah, and to add to what you were saying too, I was having this conversation with one of our engineering managers, and their whole point was, real AI adoption starts when you start using for personal projects. And he was talking about how they started building their own home garden and doing it with AI, and that's where it started clicking.
Do you know what? And I've actually just started doing that recently, where I've decided I really want to do some things in my garden. I'm like, you know what? Actually, hey, Claude, or we call Claude meatballs. It's nice. Cloudy with meatballs. So we've decided to just go on to meatballs and just be like, hey, I've got a south-facing garden. I'm in Nottingham. What's something that's really easy to grow, smells nice, maybe has a bit of flower? And it came back with lavender and rosemary, which is great,
nice,
great suggestion. So like, I'm actually in this whole plan now that I've been working out and exactly how I'm going to build boxes and put down raspberry and lavender growing all over my garden. And yeah, it is those personal projects that often make the difference, which I think actually answers my next. So my next question was about the knowledge gaps between people will form as AI adoption accelerates. So you start off using it, but does the team start so you start off, you're using AI to answer these questions, whether it's gardening or anything else. Does that create a knowledge gap? Do you think you're going to start having software engineers that don't know how to software engineer? And actually, does that matter? Like in the same way that I actually couldn't tell you anymore for the life of me how you would plot an XY axis across the screen in order to draw a box, but I don't really need to.
Yeah, I mean, even for me, some stuff like before AI, I was using ORM frameworks so much, I forgot how to write SQL queries. And in my day-to-day work, it never mattered because I have my ORM there.
Right.
So I think the knowledge gaps for AI are a bit more stark because you might have a track of people that just adopted the tool in the sense that I used to write my code in Visual Studio. Now I write in Cursor. I have better tab suggestions and so on. So literally nothing changed. So they maintain their workflows and everything. On the other side, you might have someone who's really passionate about AI, and they're the people who are like, this new experimental feature came out, we need to use it. And we have an AI adoption channel, and we have the weekly coffee chats specifically around AI. So some people might show up there and be like, I don't know how to prompt or do good instruction files. And you have the other end of the spectrum that's like, why aren't we using prompt templates? Why don't we have more agent skills? And those knowledge gaps are very difficult because I've heard it from some of our engineers when I was doing retros with them. I check the AI adoption channel and I don't understand what half of the terms mean. And it's a big strategy question that how do you address this? Because part of it is like, you know what, they'll catch up. Let's just focus on our power users. Let's enable them. Let's let them build everything. But also at the same time, there's obviously a beauty in bringing everyone up to speed and say, okay, our power users are doing whatever they want to do. Let's try and address the knowledge gap in terms of make sure everyone has at least the same baseline. And I think we're seeing a combination of those in Kentico, depending on what the jump function is and, again, what the product team is specifically working on.
Okay, interesting. And okay, so you have three takeaways on your three main takeaways, which is chase the 80%. So that's the 80% that's not directly coding and where AI can help with that. Focus on experiments over mandates, and adoption is a multi-step process. So that's that experiment, refine, and then release it. If someone's listening to this right now, they're a tech leader, it's Monday morning, they're having their coffee and they're listening to this, what's the single first thing they should change? Like that morning that they're listening to this, what's the single first thing that they should change, do you think?
Oh, that's a good one. Because every company is very different. Whatever they're really struggling with might be vastly different. But I would say the mindset is the biggest one, because you start to think about what do I actually want to achieve, not what do I have to achieve it with. So if you lead with where you want to be, your North Star, and you break it into logical steps, it's going to make way more sense than you trying to pressure yourself into making everything fit in this AI age.
So find your North Star. That would be...
Find your North Star.
That would be the first thing. Excellent. And then final question, you called yourself an AI skeptic at the start. After everything you've seen, everything you've built at Kentico, are you less skeptical than you were, or are you more skeptical now?
In some things, I'm way more in the skeptical side of things, even close to, AI burnout. On the other hand, I'm way more excited because a lot of the conversation has shifted from around Christmas time from, oh, should we be using it to, oh, wow, this is actually powerful. So I'm getting way more hopeful. Overall, I really enjoy it. And I think it's a great shame that we have so much technology available to us and it's such a great age. And a lot of our time is completely wasted on arguing about, KPIs or if this is a product market fit and so on. So I would like people to actually experiment with the tools we have, not the tools we wish we have.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much. Alex, it's been a very interesting conversation. I really enjoyed your presentation. I think this really helps as well. Thank you very much. And I guess we'll have to do this again in a year and find out about those metrics and who shifts from what for budgeting.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation, and hopefully it changes for the best.
Cool. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Dad the Influencer talking about travel technology and innovation. Please subscribe to my podcast so you don't miss the new episodes. If you would like to talk about something on this podcast, travel related, technology related, or about innovation, please write me at dad@dadtheinfluencer.com or leave a comment wherever you are listening to this podcast.